Welcome to the Dan Norton Show, a show on which I promote Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, a philosophy of reason, egoism, and capitalism. It is Monday, January 12th, 2026. Well, there has been some news on my mind recently, in particular, the killing of Renee Good. So I put that in the show title of today. I thought we could discuss that. It's been a hot topic in the news ever since the killing occurred on January 7th. Actually, it happened the day of my last live stream. I was streaming when I found out about it. I was scrolling through Twitter or X, and I came across some posts mentioning a shooting by an ICE agent in Minneapolis, and I didn't pause for long to look into it then. I was looking for other posts to reply to. So I just saw a couple brief mentions of it. But then after the show and in the following days, I learned more and more about it. And it's continued to be a hot topic of discussion. So I thought that it might be good to discuss that on my show. And I invite you all to discuss it along with me. And hopefully we can make some progress on coming to a good view of it. You might wonder, well, what relevance does it have to a show like this, which is about promoting Ayn Rand's philosophy? And that's a good question. I was thinking about that a little earlier today. And I think part of promoting a philosophy is showing how it applies to current events going on in the world. Otherwise, what is the relevance of the philosophy if it can't actually be applied to what's going on in the world? So, looking at this event or any event through the lens of Ayn Rand's philosophy, I think is a helpful thing to do. So, now even among people who, just because you agree with Ayn Rand's philosophy, which you might not, depend, I don't know what perspective people are coming from who are listening to the show. I do have a lot of people listen who are fans of Ayn Rand, but also other people who aren't necessarily fans of Ayn Rand, but maybe they've heard of her or they're very new to her and they're just interested in hearing about a show or hearing a show from um, by someone who shares her ideas. So there might be a range of perspectives among people in my audience, but even among people who do basically share my philosophical outlook of Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, that's what she called it. I think there is some disagreements out there. I've seen some on social media and various platforms. So just because you hold a philosophy doesn't mean there's a straightforward, obvious view that one should have of any given event. There's often room for disagreements, room for interpreting things in different ways. Um, so maybe we'll get into some of that today. Um, and as for my own view of the whole issue, well, I don't know that I have a very well worked out view. I've definitely had many thoughts about it. Um, but is it murder? Was it killing in self-defense? Um, are we in a position right now to claim certainty about uh, which of those it was? Or can we merely claim possibility or probability? It's maybe probably murder, but can't be 100% certain. Is there any room for reasonable doubts? Um, or is it probably self-defense or merely possibly self-defense? So exactly, even if you lean in one direction or the other, you might not lean all the way. You might not think it's like a obvious open and shut case, and there's nothing to be debated about it. Or maybe you do. Maybe you think it is obvious and just it's obvious what this was, and there's nothing to debate about it. And we can discuss that too. So whatever your perspective is, I'm open to discussing it as long as it's civil. That's one of the ground rules that I like to have on my show. I like to have civil, respectful discussion, and let's all try to get at the truth and do it in a respectful, non-hostile way. I figure like if you can't do it in a calm, respectful, non-hostile way, then maybe you should just step back from the discussion for a while until you can discuss it calmly, because I don't think much progress will be made if you just are extremely emotional about it, or the person you're engaging with is extremely emotional and they're not able to form a calm, reasoned position. I think maybe at that point it's better just to like not discuss it for a while. And I think there has been a lot of it is a very emotional issue. I mean, I think it's tragic what happened, and there's a lot of emotion surrounding the issue, understandably. But I think part of the challenge in coming to a correct view of something is to not allow your emotions to be in the driver's seats, and to make sure that your reason is in control. And sometimes when there's a very emotionally charged issue, it can make sense to just step back from it for a while until you feel like you're calm, and then engage in discussion or debates, or just thinking through it more in your own mind, if you're not engaging with anyone else. Okay, so let me see if anyone's here yet. I haven't been looking at the chat for the first few minutes, but let me take a look at it now. Oh, I see Robert is here. Hi, Robert. He's the first chatter of the day. Okay, so let me read some of Robert's comments here. And I often share the comments on screen, so I'm going to do that. I'll mention, by the way, I did do a Facebook post a couple days ago asking for people's thoughts on this issue of the killing of Renee Good, and maybe I'll share some of that on screen. There were a lot of comments on it. I think over 100 comments, and I participated in some of the threads. So I did put some comments there, and maybe we'll get into that. But I do want to give priority to people who are here live. And I see Robert is here live and is the first commenter. So I want to engage with him. And I just want to mention, as I usually do at the beginning of my show, you can shape the topics of my show by participating. So you can take advantage of that. And you can do that either by being in the YouTube chat or by calling in. I do have a Zoom link, which I have pinned in the chat, as well as a phone number that you can dial. So those are some ways you can join the discussion. Okay, and thanks for any likes on the stream as well. I want to mention that. That helps promote the show. And let me pop out this chat. And then share it on the screen. And we could talk about other issues too. We don't have to just talk about this topic today. As I mentioned in the show, we can talk about this and other topics that people want to raise. But I think we'll at least start out with this and see where it goes. Okay. So now I am sharing the chat, and I'm going to read these chats from Robert. He says, tragic about the shooting. He's talking about the shooting of Renee Good. Tragic, but also epistemologically tragic. Trying to bridge the gap between interpretations of the event, including the interpretations of the available evidence, is disheartening at best. There are so many elements behind the scenes, radically different hierarchies of values, and even deeper sense of life. The extremes are less interesting. The most nuanced perspectives are more challenging, but in some ways, even harder to reconcile. All right. So there's some thoughts from Robert. And Robert, he also participated in my chat, in my Facebook post, rather. He put a comment there. So maybe we'll see what he had to say there later. But thanks for your thoughts here. So I agree it's tragic, but then you also add epistemologically tragic. So epistemology, for anyone who doesn't know, is the theory of knowledge. So how to reach a correct conclusion, how to reach knowledge, as opposed to merely belief. Maybe that's a contrast. You might have strong beliefs, but just because you believe something, like if you believe that he that Renee Good was murdered, just because you believe that doesn't mean it's you know that, right? You could have false beliefs, but if you know something, that means it's not only something you believe, but it's true. You have a true belief. So it can be a challenge to reach knowledge as opposed to merely belief. So whether you believe she was murdered or that she was not murdered, um, that's not necessarily a true belief. And how do you how do you ensure that you have knowledge? And maybe you can't even have knowledge in some cases. Sometimes it's just too difficult. And maybe in the future, after you study some issue more and more information comes in, you will be in a position to have knowledge, like maybe after a court case and there's a lot of investigation and a trial, then you can claim knowledge, but knowledge often requires work. Sometimes it's very easy, and maybe some people think it's very easy in this case, and we could discuss that. But sometimes it's not easy, and you can't necessarily have knowledge immediately, and you have to go through a process that takes a while, and then you can have knowledge, maybe, sometimes at least. Trying to bridge the gap between interpretations of the events. Yeah, so I guess at least two of the main interpretations of this event are that Renee Good was murdered. That's one interpretation. Another is that she was killed in self-defense. And then there's interpretations of the available evidence. Like there's been various videos from different angles of this incident. Like there's a video from the rear uh, of her car. So she was parked or stopped in her SUV in the streets, kind of in a perpendicular to the streets. I think she was trying to block traffic and make it harder for ICE to get around. I think that might have been what she was doing. And one of the videos, which I didn't see immediately, and maybe not until 2 or 3 days later, showed like 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes leading up to the shooting, where she's just parked in the middle, or I don't know exactly in the middle, but blocking one of the lanes on this street, Portland Avenue, I believe is the name of the street. And she's kind of pointed perpendicular to the streets. And so it's hard for cars to go around, or at least not as easy as it normally would be. And I think it's a one-way street, but I think there are two lanes going in that one direction. And I think for much of these few minutes prior to the shooting, she's blocking, I think, at least one of the lanes entirely. And I wasn't aware of that at first. And she's in there, her car honking the horn and kind of doing a little, some people call it a little dance in her car. Um, Try to, I guess, get under the skin of the ICE agents, piss them off, make their job harder. And this goes on for, I think, a couple minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes, something like that, prior to the shooting. And then some ICE agents roll up. I guess they figure out that, what's going on. And one ICE agent drives around her. Uh, that's Jonathan Ross, who's the one who eventually shot her. Then another ICE agent or truck doesn't drive around her, but stops shortly before her. And then two ICE agents get out of that truck. I'm just going over the basic facts of what happens for anyone who doesn't know. Maybe you know part of the incident. Maybe you've seen some of the videos, but not the larger context. So I'm trying to fill in maybe what is more context than you originally had, and just to set the stage for this discussion, if we're going to talk about this. So two ICE agents get out of the car. One of those two goes up to her door, her car door, and the window is rolled down, and I think he says, get the F out of the car." And she doesn't. She stays in her car. And meanwhile, um, Jonathan Ross, he's got his cell phone out, and he's walking around the car, and he's, recording the license plate. You can also see the wife of Renee Good. I guess she's a lesbian, although she was married before that and had kids. But at this point, I guess she's married to a woman. So her wife, Becca, I think that's her name. She is outside of the car, and she's also filming or recording with her cell phone. She's recording the ICE agent, which is record Jonathan Ross, who's going around the car, and she's sort of taunting him and saying things like, I think it's time for you to go get some lunch, big boy, or something like this. And after Jonathan Ross has circled the car, and he's now, I think he's in front of the car. Um, Renee Good starts to back up in her car a few feet. I guess maybe she's trying to get away from the other ICE agent who has got his arm in her car door now. I think he's trying to open it from the inside, but I guess it's locked and the door never opens. But he's kind of got his arm in the door, and I guess maybe at that point she's trying to get away from him, so she backs up, I guess, so she can do a 2-point turn, 1, 2, and then angle herself down the road so she can drive away. I think that's a reasonable interpretation, at least, of what she's trying to do. So she starts to back up. And at this point, Jonathan Ross, the guy who is the ICE agent who was recording with her phone and walking around the car, he's in front of her car after she's backed up. And now she's about to pull forward into the right. And I think when she's kind of at the point of her turn, she starts to go forward into the right. And that's when he pulls out his gun and he shoots her through the windshield. That's the first shot. And it's not clear to me, at least, whether she like grazes him and like makes contact with him with the front left of her vehicle when she's pulling forward. Some people say from one angle, if you look at the video that shows the front of her car, I think that's the most plausible case, that it looks like there is contact made, and he kind of jerks back right when right when he's very close to the car, but it's kind of grainy image. And it's not clear, like, did the car make him jerk back, or was that his reflex action that made him jerk back? I mean, it all happens within, like a split second, and the image is kind of grainy. If you look at this from the rear image, a different video angle, I think the image is not as grainy, but on the other hand, you have another officer blocking him in front, so it's harder to see what happens from that angle. But I think from the rear angle, it seems less likely that there's contact. Maybe there still is, but I think it's just like you would be less likely to think that she actually hit him than you would if you were watching it from the front angle. So this is some of the issue, the interpretation of evidence issue. Robert mentioned here, interpretations of the available evidence. I think that can be challenging because you have all these different angles and different graininess. They don't all look the same. It's like you wouldn't be as likely to conclude that he was hit from one angle as from the other. Some people say she was trying to use her vehicle as a weapon to ram the guy and run him over. And other people say no, she was just trying to get away. Another issue is there's ice on the street, and you can. So, was Jonathan Ross when he kind of like jerked back when maybe she made contact with him? Is that because he slipped on the ice as he was like lunging to get away? Did that also play a role? Or was it entirely just contact by the car or just jumping and it wasn't due to the ice that there was this sudden movement? Also, there you can kind of hear a thud in one of the videos, like at the moment where there might have been impact, but was that because um, she hit him like in his hip or his leg with the car? Or is that because he jerked back and maybe his hand went forward to like brace himself on the hood, or in that hood hitting the hood made the thump? I don't know. You can't really see what happened. So there's a lot here to process and think about. And I'm just getting into some of the details. There's a lot more. And are all these details relevant? Well, maybe to some issues, but not to others. Apparently, he went to the hospital afterwards to get checked out. And some people claim that he was hit. I think his parents or one of his parents came out with a statement that he was hit. But I don't know if that's true. But anyways, I see we got some more chats coming in and we got some more chatters. So thank you all for being here. And let me look at some more of these chats. I see we have Chachi here. Hello. It's been a while since I've seen you. Actually, I don't know if are you the I think I might have had some interaction with you before once. I'm not sure if you're the same person that I'm thinking of. Okay, I'm not sure. I just went to your channel and I can't tell. But anyways, hello to you. And where'd my chat screen go? Here we go. And Agosti is also here. Hello. So let me read through some more of these chats. I read this is the next one I was up to from Robert. He says, in the statements of the pro-ICE, pro-Trump objectivists, which he puts in quotes because maybe they're not really objectivists if they are pro-Trump and pro-ICE. Um, in the statements of the pro-ICE, pro-Trump objectivists, you can hear the words of that Ayn Rand hero, Dr. Robert Stadler. He's being sarcastic because Dr. Robert Stadler is a spoiler alert. He's a villain in Atlas Shrugged, or at least someone who turns bad. Um, okay, so You can hear the words of that Ayn Rand hero, Dr. Robert Stadler, when he snaps, "I'm so sick of all you impractical idealists." Okay, so that's Robert says you can hear that in the statements of some pro-ICE, pro-Trump objectivists in quotes. I am so sick of all you impractical idealists. Or if you know the film Chocolat, the Comte de Renaud, when he says, "Something must be done, Sarge." Okay, I have seen that film once long ago. I don't remember that particular line, but is that in reference to cracking down on the non-religious people who are not complying with religion and pursuing their pleasure? And is that's analogous to ICE cracking down on people who are just trying to live good, happy lives? I'm not sure. That's just a guess. Okay. Here's a ghosty. He says, "Hope you're doing well. Thanks. Same to you. Transferred a donation through PayPal. Don't have YouTube linked with a credit card." Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I remember you sent in a donation last time you were here, and I appreciate that. Um, I don't know if you meant just now you did that, or let's see. I'm going to my email, see if I see anything. Oh yeah. Yeah, I see you just sent in a contribution. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That reminds me, something I should also mention. I do take super chats now. So I was recently monetized on YouTube. My channel got monetized and I turned on the super chat feature. So if you want to help support my show, support the work I do of advancing Ayn Rand's ideas, a philosophy of reason, egoism, and capitalism, I definitely appreciate it if you made a super chat contribution. And that way, you also benefit because you get more time and attention and priority. I want to give priority to people who send super chats. So I'm going to give priority right now to any, if Agosti has any questions, I will give him priority and read his chats first since he made a contribution. That's a way I can make this show self-sustaining financially, which is what I would like it to be. So it can be a win-win, mutually beneficial kind of transaction. If you send in super chat money or PayPal or Patreon, I also have that, then I get that extra benefit from your presence here. But then you can also get an extra benefit because I will give priority to your chats. So thank you, Agosti. All right, let me go back to um, the chat here. Okay, so I got up to this one now from Chachi. He says, "That's not when Ross pulls out the gun. Show the video. You'll see it's way earlier." I don't remember what I said. I think I said he pulled out the gun when she was pulling the she just pulled out the pulled back and then she was about to pull forward. And I think maybe it was at the moment when she was revving her engine to pull forward. At least you can't really hear this, but this was what was said by someone else who was commenting on the video. Um, but anyways, at that point, whether it was due to he heard the revving of the engine for her to pull forward, but I think it was about when she got to the point where she was just going to start pulling forward. I think that's when he pulls out his gun from the holster. But we can look at the video. I have some links to videos, and maybe we should go through some of those at some point. Um, but let me just read through some more of these chats for right now. So, yeah, that's something we can look into. When exactly does he pull out the gun? And you might think that what he should have done is instead of focusing on pulling out his gun and shooting at her, he should have used that time to just step out of the way of the path of the vehicle, and so that once she pulls forward, she's not going to hit him. I've heard some people saying that, like, why didn't he just do that instead of shooting her? And I think some people have said that what should have been done is just let her get away. They already had her license plate number, and in order to de-escalate the situation from a potentially lethal one where someone might get killed to one where it's less likely for anyone to get killed, why not just let her get away? So if he was really in danger of his life, it seems like there was time for him to get away. Like the time he used to pull out his gun, aim it at her and shoot, that time could have been used to just quickly step aside and then just let her go. Now, counter to that, some people have said, well, maybe he was worried about his fellow ICE agent who was reaching into the car, and he was concerned about his safety. Apparently, Jonathan Ross, the shooter, he had been dragged in a car several months earlier. Apparently, back in June, he had busted someone's rear window on the driver's side, and that maybe to like reach in and try to open the door, and then I guess the driver pulled forward and dragged him, and his arm got injured, and he had to go to the hospital, get a bunch of stitches. So I don't know if maybe he wasn't as concerned about his own safety as he was about the safety of his fellow ICE agents getting dragged like he was. And maybe for that reason, he shot at Renee Good to prevent the other ICE agent from being dragged. And to that, you might say, well, the other ICE agent should not have had his hands in the car to begin with. That's you might think that was an unnecessary escalation of the situation. And if there's a danger of him potentially being dragged because she gets scared and panics and wants to just pull forward and get away, well, maybe that's his fault then for scaring her off and activating her fight or flight mechanism. And so maybe Jonathan Ross should have shot his fellow ICE agents for instigating her panic attack, which made her flee off and potentially drag him along with her. If he stuck his hand in the car, maybe he should have shot his fellow ICE agent to defuse the situation, or maybe like shot him in the foot or something, so it's less likely to be lethal. This just occurred to me right now. I'm not saying this is necessarily a good thing to do, but if you do find yourself in these, split second situations, and we have, some time to think about it after the fact of what might have been better, or at least less worse to do, maybe that would have been less worse to shoot him, or maybe just grab him and push him away, rather than do something that escalates the situation. So, okay, well, there's some more thoughts, but let me come back to the chat now. See what else we have here. Okay, then Robert says, best I can tell, the officer would have been unable to tell whether Miss Good was turning toward or away from the officer, and whether Miss Good was turning to the left or the right was irrelevant. If he was a step away, as he did, I guess you mean if he was able to step away, as he did, after brief contact with the bumper, it made no sense to respond with the action he took. Okay. And there's also the question of the second and the third shot, which are clearly from the side. She's clearly not, he is not in her path at that point. He is to the side. In the first shot, He's sort of off to the side, maybe not fully. And in the bullet actually goes through the windshield. So he's not fully on the side of the car, at least not as much as in the case of the second and the third shot. So you might think even if the first shot was justified, the second and the third shot were not. They're at least harder to justify. Now, on the other hand, you might say, well, once his panic attack has set in and he's panicked, well, he's just kind of on automatic by the time he's doing the second and third shots, and he's just shooting to kill. And I've heard some people say, well, once you decide someone is a lethal threat, you're justified in killing the person and not just firing once, just making sure it's completely gone. I don't know if that's correct, but I think that's what some people have said. But at least let it be noted that he's definitely not in the path of the vehicle at the time he takes the second and third shots. So even if those second and third shots are justifiable, they're at least harder to justify than the first shot. So just looking again here at Robert's chat, if he was able to step away as he did after the brief contact, it made no sense to respond with the action he took. The only thing I can think of is just he was trying to protect his fellow officer, or maybe he was trying to protect himself if he was if he didn't know the direction she was turning. But you can. So here's another thing: you can see from the camera that he was taking. I guess this is the cell phone angle, his cell phone. You can see her through her windshield turning to the right. Now, I don't know if his eyes were looking at the direction of her steering wheel at the point, so maybe he didn't know she was turning to the right, but at least we can see in the video that she was turning to the right, i.e., away from him. So it's not clear that she was trying to hit him. I think there's a good case that she was trying to steer away from him so that she did not hit him and could just get away. So that gets back to this chat. The officer would have been unable to tell whether she was turning away from him. I don't think he would have been unable to tell, because you can see her through the, I mean, in the same direction he's aiming through the windshield, you can see her right there turning to the right. So, and if he's looking there in order to aim at her, then it seems like very close to his line of sight would have been her hands on the steering wheel turning to the right. So I'm not sure why he wouldn't have stopped at that point and not shot, unless it was out of concern for his fellow officer potentially getting dragged in the car. And maybe that's the fault of the fellow officer for having his having his arms in the car in the first place, when maybe he shouldn't have. I don't know all the protocol on what they are and aren't allowed to do. Okay, but let me get through some more of these chats, and maybe I can cycle back to some of them, but I want to get through some more. The officer was able to step to the side and did. And even if he was going to be contacted and thought there was a good chance, and maybe if he was contacted, I still don't think that by itself justifies lethal force. I mean, especially given that this vehicle is going from a stopped position, so going from 0 to whatever miles per hour, she couldn't have been going very fast at that point. So even if you get bumped, it's not like it's gonna kill you or and you could see like right after she drives off, he's still walking. He didn't get run over. He's on his 2 feet. He's walking around, and I think he goes up to the window and to get a look at her after she's crashed, and then he starts walking back and he says, "Call 911." And then I think maybe a minute or so later, he gets in one of these ice trucks and then they drive away. So even if you think you are going to be bumped, I think it's reasonable to think that given the low speed at this point, it's not going to be a lethal injury. And it seems like the officer who had his arm in the car could easily have just let go. I mean, unless you think like uh, Renee Good was like holding on to him or something so that he couldn't let go. And maybe that this can't be judged in the heat of the moment. But I don't know how plausible it is to think that this other officer is in danger of being overpowered by the woman in the driver's seat, such that he can't just let go or jerk his arm away from her quickly if he needs to, such that, was he really in danger of being dragged? Uh, Seems pretty unlikely to me. So was Jonathan Ross really not really concerned about the safety of his fellow officer? I mean, what are the chances that her strength is going to overpower the ICE agent's strength, and she's going to like drag him along or something? Or did he just get pissed off at her and he wanted to stop her from getting away, so he shot her. And even after he's clearly out of her path on the second and third shots, he still continues. He shoots her a second and a third time. Maybe this suggests that it's more due to him being pissed off at her and he doesn't want her to get away than it is that he was really worried about being killed by her or his fellow ICE agents being killed or seriously injured. Um, okay, so I was up to this one. The officer was able to step to the side and did whatever contact there was had no effect on his ability to step aside and to walk away after the incident, says Robert. He was able to walk away after, yeah. I mean, it might have hurt him a little. If the car bumps him, even if it's at a relatively low speed by like three miles an hour or something, when it's just starting to pull forward, and I can see getting hurt a little by that, but to the point where you're worried your life is in danger, that seems pretty dubious that that he would be worried to that degree about his own well-being. Um, and okay, then Chachi says, "Watch the video closely, Robert. He pulls out the gun at least 2 full seconds before she goes forward. He actually moves to his right before she accelerates, opposed to just, I guess you mean as opposed to when she just lets go of the brakes." Okay, well, maybe we can look into that later. Maybe I'll pull the video up and share it on the screen and we can look at when he pulls out the gun relative to the position of her car. Okay, Chachi says, we saw each other at Ocon in Boston and in Miami 2 years ago. Okay. Um, I I I take your word for it. I meet a lot of people at Ocons, so sorry I can't make the particular connection right now in my memory. But I don't know if you go by a different name because I don't remember anyone by the name of Chachi um, at Ocon, but maybe you had a different name there that I would remember. And I don't know if this is your profile picture either, if that's a picture of you or somebody else. I went to I went to your channel a little bit ago just to see a little more about you, but there's not much on it. I thought if there was like a video of you there, maybe I would recognize you. Okay, but anyway, hello again. Oh, you say yes, you go by a different name. Okay. Well, it's up to you as to whether you want to tell me your your the name I would have met you, the name you had when you met me, or that you told me when you met me. And you also say that's not your profile picture. That's a commercial about whiskey or alcohol. Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to know from looking at your profile name or your picture. That's not going to enable me to confirm or to remember who you are. But anyway, I met somebody at Ocon in Boston and Miami um, who goes by the name Chachi now. All right. Okay, and then Chachi says, did he shoot before the bump or after the bump? Kind of difficult to shoot when getting bumped by a car, don't you think? I thought maybe it was a little bit before the bump, and I don't think I claimed that it was after the bump. Um, I thought he was. I think, and maybe I'll go back to check that the shot was shortly before the bump or the potential bump at least. I mean, I think that it's an open question as to whether he was actually bumped, but the moments when it looks like maybe he was bumped, I thought the shot was a little before that. Um, but the second and third shot, I guess, would have to be after the bump if he if he actually did get bumped. So you say kind of difficult to shoot while getting bumped. So this is evidence that he did not get bumped because if he did get bumped, it would have been too difficult to shoot. Is that the implication here? So if there was a bump, then I guess the maybe what happened is before the bump was the first shot, and then after the bump was the second and third. Okay. Um, but also he was holding his phone the whole time, I think. I don't think he ever dropped it. I think the angle changes. Like it goes up to the sky. Maybe that's after the bump and he kind of loses control, but it's I question, is that proper protocol? Should you be filming in one hand and, potentially killing somebody in the other hand? Or should you be totally locked in, 100% focus with one hand? Maybe even have both hands on the gun but anyway, at least not having your other hand trying to film something. Is that proper protocol? Did he have a body cam? Why wasn't the body cam being used instead of the cell phone in his hand? Is that proper protocol? Is that the way to record something? I don't know if maybe he did have a body cam. Was it turned on? To my knowledge, there hasn't been footage released so far, at least, from the body cam. If there was a body cam, but there's just the footage from his cell phone. As far as footage from him goes, there are other people around who have other angles on it, but I'm kind of doubtful. You should be like having a gun and a phone at the same time. Um, you're not even supposed to drive when you're like on a phone, right? Isn't that a rule? Like, um, you shouldn't be like driving and have a phone here. I don't know if that's a rule, but if that is a rule, then you certainly, I would think, not supposed to be like potentially killing somebody and having a phone in the other hands. Unless I don't know if there's like if you want to have evidence of the whole thing that went down and you maybe you think it's better to that you have evidence of everything that happened. And I don't know, did his body cam die? So and that's why he was using his maybe he's out of power or something, and that's why he was filming using his cell phone, or I don't know. Maybe there's some justification, but there's at least a question here as to my mind as to why he was recording in the way that he was. Florida Nick is here. Hello. What have you missed? Well, we've been talking a lot about this incident, the shooting of Renee Good, and we've just talked about a lot of different details regarding it. I saw you did answer my post. I put a post on YouTube that just said thoughts about the killing of Renee Good with a question mark after it, inviting people to enter their thoughts. And Florida Nick put a reply there. I don't know if you want to say what your reply was here. I guess I could say it for you, but you can also just repeat what you said here, and we can talk about it if you'd like. I thought maybe it would also be good to take a poll here of the chat and see what people think about the issue. Let me take a look at my analytics here. Oh, got a lot more views. A bunch of people came by in the first hour. It's like 33 people. Thanks for any new subscribers, by the way. I'm looking forward to getting up to 1,000 subscribers. I'm 15 subscribers away from that right now. So 15 spots left if you want to be one of the first 15, one of the first 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. And I have an offer out. If you are one of the first 1,000 subscribers and you are publicly subscribed so that I can verify you're a subscriber, then I will give you a free super chat. So there's a little incentive to become a subscriber. You can change your settings in YouTube so that other people can verify whether you're subscribed to the channels, or you can just keep all your subscriptions private so nobody knows. But if you are publicly subscribed, and I can see you're subscribed to my channel, then I'll give you a free super chat, which you can claim at any time just by saying, "This is my free super chat," and then ask your question. And then I will treat it as if it were a super chat and give it priority, give it more time and attention than I otherwise would if it were just a regular chat. All right. Thanks for the likes on the stream. And Florida Nick says, I think I responded it was murder. Yeah. I think he said looks like it was murder to me or something. I can pull that up. It is the same question I posed the in my Facebook posts, which I might also bring up later. But here is the post that I put on YouTube. Thoughts on the killing of Renee Good. And there was one reply from Florida Nick, and he said, "Looks like murder to me." So I got a lot more replies on Facebook. I think there were over 100 comments on Facebook, but that was the only reply I got on YouTube. So thanks for your reply there. But maybe now is a good time to pull my chat and see what you think of it. So I think I'll ask my chat whether you think it was murder or justified killing or killing in self-defense. Last I checked, there were 7 people, so maybe we'll get about that many votes. All right, I'll share my screen as I start this poll. Okay. Was the killing of Renee Good a murder? And you could understand that a murder to be a justified killing. Well, maybe those are two different questions. Sorry, unjustified killing is how you could think of murder. But I'm not sure those are equivalent, murder and unjustified killing. Are there any unjustified killings that are not murders? Um, I don't know. Manslaughter, that would be a killing. Maybe a I don't know. Is manslaughter considered justified? Like if you kill someone in a vehicle accidents, that would be a killing, but um, I wouldn't say it's a justified killing, but I also wouldn't say it's a murder necessarily. Maybe it's manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter. So now maybe you would say it's unjustified. I guess depending on the case, it might or might not be justified. Like, what if someone slips on a patch of ice, their car skids on ice that they couldn't see and they couldn't reasonably have been expected to see? Or, um, or maybe the brakes malfunction or something. And so that would be, well, maybe then it would be a justified killing, which isn't to say it was an intended killing, but um, so there's some nuances here that I'm not sure I have entirely clear. But at least for now, I'll just ask the question like this: Was the killing of Renee Good a murder? And one option will be say yes. One option will be say no. It was self-defense. Killing the killing the killing was self-defense. Now, I don't know if there's some other options that I should add here. I can add up to 2 more options. I think I'll have one option as I don't know because maybe you're just not sure. Uh, Another option could be the killing was not self-defense, but defense of his fellow ICE officer. Maybe some people think that's. I guess I could put that as an option. Or I could just say the killing was justified and leave it open as to why it was justified. So you might think it was justified because it was self-defense, or you might think it was justified because he was defending the other ICE officer. But I guess if your view is the killing was justified for some reason, not necessarily the self-defense reason, then you can choose that option. But if you think it's justified specifically because it was self-defense, then choose this option here that says no, the killing was self-defense. If you think it was justified for some other reason, then just choose this option. And then for the final option, I'll just say I don't know, or I'm not sure. Maybe you're leaning in some direction, but you're not sure of it. You're not certain. So I guess I don't know is broader. It could mean you're completely undecided. You're not even leaning. Um, but even if you're not in that sort of position, maybe you are leaning, maybe even strongly leaning in a certain direction, but you're not certain. You can also choose that fourth option. Okay, so I'm going to go with that for right now. Okay, I just started the poll, so now people can vote on that. And I don't know who is voting for what, so this is anonymous in case that's a concern. All I see is what you see here. Um, how many votes there are for each choice, but it doesn't tell me who's voting for what. You can even vote if you're not in the chat. Um, so far, there's only one vote. Okay, I'll leave that up for a while, and let's we can keep going. So feel free to continue the chats. Okay, Nick just says, I don't think he was defending the other guy because I think there's a typo. Because in that situation, is it really safe to shoot that close to him? What if he'd missed? Well, if he's that close, then wouldn't that make it easier to hit what he's trying to hit? If he's just a couple feet away from both him and from both his fellow agents and Renee, he can just easily direct the bullet at one or the other. Um, are you saying like if he was shooting to what if he'd missed? You mean what if he'd missed Renee and accidentally hit either his fellow officer or just someone else? I guess on the side, the second and third shot when he's shooting from the side, I guess it's possible the maybe he can miss. Maybe if she jerks her head back, I don't know if she's still conscious at that point after the first shot, but if she is and her head falls back, maybe he would miss and the bullet would just go straight through the car out the other window, through the passenger window and hit someone on the other side. Um, but you say you don't think he was defending the other guy. I'd be interested to hear what the concern is about safety in that case. Like, what is the concern that he might hit some bystander accidentally when he's intending to shoot Renee? Is that the concern? All right. Um, so here's another thought related to this, which kind of broadens the issue. We've been focused a lot on the particular moments or surrounding moments and minutes of the shooting. But if we broaden the focus to the United States immigration policy and the way it deals with immigrants, you might be very anti that. And I am. I think the US has a very bad immigration policy. It's much too restrictive. It should be much easier for people to immigrate to this country. And I think the tactics ICE uses are not good, and maybe it's right to say they're not objective law. They're they're anti-objective law, where they can just go around and pull people off the streets into unmarked cars by people doing this wearing masks and I don't think they're using due process in many cases. Even there have been cases where people have even shown them IDs to show that they have lawful status here, and even then they're still detained. I think there's a case which is being handled by the Pacific Legal Foundation right now. There was someone interviewed on the Ayn Rand Institute's podcast, Joshua Wyndham, I think that might be his name. I think he was interviewed by, and he's with the Pacific Legal Foundation, I believe, or maybe it's Institute for Justice. I forget which one. And he is interviewed by Agostina Vergara Cid about this case of someone who I think he showed his ID and he was still detained after that. So I think the methods that are being used, at least in some cases, are very dubious, if not just outright wrong. And I think pe people have been deported wrongly. So you might have this overall very negative picture of ICE and what they're doing, but that still doesn't necessarily mean that in this particular case, ICE was in the wrong. Maybe they were in the wrong, but I, I I'm not sure that one can automatically conclude that. And I wanted to give this parallel sort of example, and it's the case of John Adams and the Boston Massacre. So back in 1770, I think that was the year of the Boston Massacre, there were some British agents in the colonies, and I guess there was heightened tensions at the time between Britain and the colonists, and there was the colonists were taunting the British officers, and I think maybe throwing stuff at them. I don't know if it was snowballs or something else. And I forget there might be more to the setup of this that I'm forgetting. But in any case, at a certain point, the British officers, or one of them, fired into the crowd and killed one or more people. And then there was a court case surrounding this incident, and John Adams was the lawyer for the British soldiers. and I think that he won his case, and it was decided that this was not murder or whatever. I don't know what the charge was, but um, the officers were found innocent, I think, acting lawfully or reasonably. I don't know exactly what the verdict was. But anyways, the broader point is just you might think in the bigger picture, it's Americans were in the right and Britain was being authoritarian and it was appropriate for the Americans to have this revolution and throw off the the British crown. But in this particular case, you might say, well, the British officers were still in the rights. So just because in general you might have a certain attitude which is anti some party, that doesn't mean in this particular case um, that the party you're generally opposed to is in the wrong. So likewise, in this case, even if you're generally opposed to the Trump administration and MAGA and ICE, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were in the wrong. Maybe they were in the wrong, but I don't know that it immediately follows. Maybe it does, though. At least that's, I don't know if maybe some people would argue that the entire um, institution that is ICE is just illegitimate and should not exist. And there is a movement to abolish ICE, which has been around for years. So does that then mean that like it's fair game and you can just do anything you want to interfere with their operations, including um, kill them? I don't know if people would be that extreme, but I guess I at least am not at that point where I would say they're automatically in the wrong in everything they do. Um, So, I mean, like if they're trying to deport criminals, unfortunately, I don't think they are just doing that. I think they often target people who are not criminals, people who are living here peacefully, who maybe illegally, but peacefully. Um, but if they're going after criminals, uh, I think that could be legitimate. So I wouldn't say everything they do is automatically wrong, but maybe there's a subset of what they do that is automatically wrong. In which cases maybe it is more appropriate to retaliate, at least in some form. Okay, but anyway, I just wanted to give that analogy to the John Adams case in the Boston Massacre for whatever that's worth. And there's even more fundamentally than politics, like the general issue, like zooming out from this particular shooting to talk more about like U.S. immigration policy and whether that's good. Um, so I guess on that level, you might think that these sorts of scenarios are inevitable to happen, and maybe there will be more of these kinds of scenarios if you have the sorts of immigration policies that we do and are enforcing them. So if you have really irrational immigration policies and let's say those policies include deporting people even if they're living here peacefully, they're not committing crimes, they're working for a living, supporting themselves. If you have policies in place that allow people to just break into people's homes or their cars and ask for any random person on the street for their papers or their IDs, and even if they show you their IDs, you still don't believe them necessarily and still detain them. If you have these sorts of policies, I think maybe it's inevitable that you're just going to get more and more of these kinds of tragic situations. So I think um, to go to a more fundamental level, I think we need to radically reshape our immigration policies. And if we don't, I think it's likely that there's going to be more tragic cases like this. And I think there actually was another killing the next day in Portland. I haven't looked into that much, but there was, and I don't know, so I can't say like, was that clearly justified or unjustified? I haven't looked into it. Um, but given the kind of policies we have now and given the kind of enforcement that's being done where ICE agents are being hired, and also I think the standards have been lowered for being joining ICE. I saw somewhere that it's now like open to anyone who's 18 years old or older, and the training requirements have been dropped from like certain, I don't know how long it was, some number of months down to it was like 47 days or weeks, or because President Trump is the 47th president. So how serious is that, right? How serious are they taking things if that's how they're deciding how long to make the trading? And they're offering signing bonuses to people to encourage more enrollment to become a member of ICE, and simultaneously with making it easier to become an agent by reducing the training requirements. And so, I mean, if you have people who are more untrained, I mean, is that going to lead to less or more of these kinds of incidents? And I think the kind of advertising and messaging that you see, like ICE ASMR videos. Did you hear about that one? I don't know how long ago that was, some number of months, but not really seeming to take the issue seriously or treat it with the kind of seriousness it deserves. Um, so I think we need a lot of changes to the system, or otherwise in the policies and the way they're enforced, um, or there will just be more of these sorts of tragedies. Okay, so that's zooming out a bit from the particular shooting that happened of Renee Good. But zooming out even further, uh, I think you could say that the attack on reason from philosophers makes these sorts of scenarios more likely to happen. So, as you may know, Immanuel Kant was the arch enemy of Ayn Rand, a philosopher from centuries ago, and he wrote a book called The Critique of Pure Reason. And he said his goal was to deny knowledge in order to make room for faith, something like that, in the preface to his work. So I think he was, at least people often interpret this as he's trying to save religion from the onslaught of reason during the Enlightenment, and he's a anti-Enlightenment sort of figure, contrary to common belief. Some people say he was a philosopher of the Enlightenment, but I think, well, at least in the objectivist movement, he's viewed as an anti-Enlightenment philosopher. And then following him, there was a wave of German irrationalism among philosophers. So if you throw out reason, then you're going to have irrational, absurd things happen. And you read, like, if you read the objectivist literature, is like, for example, Leonard Peikoff's book, The Ominous Parallels. Leonard Peikoff was a student of Ayn Rand, and he made the case that the horrors of Nazism followed ultimately from irrationalism in German philosophy, which had infected the United States and its educational system. And there are ominous parallels between the two societies. And some people have started to say that like ICE is like Trump's personal Gestapo, or at least a proto or quasi Gestapo agency that he's using to do his bidding. People are likening the ICE agents to the like a secret police sort of organization. I don't think it's as bad as it was in Nazi Germany, but at least it seems like there have been some significant steps in that direction, that were headed in that sort of direction. I think there's a plausible case to be made for that. So just I was trying to just paint a broader picture here beyond just immediate immigration policy in the U.S. to the state of philosophy in the world at large, going all the way back to Kant, Immanuel Kant, in 1787, when he published the second edition of the Critique of Pure Reason, which I think the second edition included that line in the preface about denying knowledge in order to make room for faith. But I mean, there's been an attack even before that, from philosophers on reason, um, like David Hume, who Kant was responding to. Um, I think he ended as a skeptic, and I think he was well. I don't know if I should go into that much at this point, but anyways, there's a long tradition in philosophy that Ayn Rand describes in one of her works as a concerted attack on the mind or on reason, something like that. So if you think, well, our mind is under attack and it can't really know the world, then maybe we have to go by faith or something other than reason, then I think it's inevitable that there are going to be all kinds of horrible events that follow in the wake of that, whether that's concentration camps in a Holocaust under the Nazis, or whether it's secret police or quasi secret police attacking the Jews, or ICE agents throwing out due process and getting involved in scenarios like the one with Renee Good, where people get killed. So there are many levels on which you could analyze this, or try to identify the cause of it. There's like the proximate cause, and then the more distal causes, and then the even more distal causes. But Ayn Rand had the view that the fundamental driver of history is philosophy. And I'm here to promote her philosophy. So I hope that it will have good downstream effects, but sometimes it's not, there's not always a immediate direct connection. All right, I see that some more chats have come in, which I want to read. I was up to this one. Florida Next says, did ICE make an ASMR video? I don't know if you would. Maybe it was like an ASMR meme video relating to ICE. Um, Maybe I can find it if I do a quick search. I think it was a few months ago. ASMR immigration ICE video. Oh, the illegal alien deportation flight. White House trolls with mocking ASMR video of undocumented immigrants being shackled and loaded onto I can't read the rest of this in the preview. But if you search, I don't know if I want to play this, but if you just search on some of these key terms, like, oh, yeah, it looks like the White House account on Twitter posted this. What's the date on this? February 18th, 2025. 104 million views. Jeez. Illegal alien deportation flight. Yeah, so if you look up that, if you go on X and look up ASMR illegal alien deportation flight, this is posted under the White House account. You can find this video. And you could probably find it on YouTube as well, I would guess. Yeah, so what does that show about the seriousness with which they take this issue and their concern for human dignity? Okay, Kutababa is here. Hello. You say, he says, I prefer this quote. God is an ever receding pocket of scientific ignorance that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller as time moves on. Did you mean you prefer that to Kant's quote about he found it necessary to deny reason in order to make room for faith? Or what? I gotta look that up. Okay, so this is from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It says, in the preface to the second edition of the Critique, Kant made a famous claim, quote, I had to deny knowledge in order to make room for faith, unquote. So I'm not sure if you're saying you prefer the quote you gave to that quote from Kant, or if you're comparing it to something else. Oh, it's a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson, says Kutababa. Was it Tertullian who said one must tear the eyes out of their reason or something like that? Oh, okay. He confirms. Kutababa says, yes, I preferred it over Kant's quote. Tertullian said, I believe because it's absurd. Credo qui absurdum. But maybe there's another quote here because this sounds different. Tear the eyes out of their reason. I haven't heard that one. Or if I did, I don't remember that one from Tertullian. Oops. Oh, it looks like maybe that was Martin Luther. Reason is the enemy of faith. One must tear the eyes out of their reason to maintain faith. That's what someone says. Someone on Reddit says that's a quote from Luther. Okay, so I'm caught up in the chat now. So what's next? Oh, I haven't, let me check the poll. I haven't seen, looks like there are three votes. Okay. And two say it was a murder. One says no, the killing was justified. I'm thinking about what my view of this is. I think for at least I started out thinking it was murder, or at least being most sympathetic to that position. But then later, I became less confident in that, which isn't to say that's not still my strongest preference, but maybe like if I was at 90% confident, maybe I'm now like at 65% confident. I'm not sure, just for example. But I guess right now I don't feel like I can, I wouldn't say I'm 100% certain it should be regarded as a murder, which I guess you would have to be in order to choose the yes option. Otherwise, I would have to choose I'm not certain. So even if you're like 99% sure, certain, or 99% of the way to certainty, that's still not 100%. So if you have any doubt at all, then I guess you should choose this last option. And that's where I am now. I don't feel 100% sure it was justified or that it was self-defense, so I can't choose either of these two options, which I guess for those also. So the first three options, they imply you're 100% sure. Otherwise, you'd have to choose this. So I guess one thing we could do here is we could debate this and try to move each other in one direction or the other. And you could call in if you want to discuss this. I'm trying to think of what my grounds are for not being certain. So like why why can't I just say 100% it's murder? And maybe there's multiple grounds, but at least one grounds I've thought of is he's trying to defend his fellow ICE agents. Like I think that's the grounds of like the case for self-defense is not as strong as the case of he's trying to defend his fellow ICE agents because it seems to me that he's if he were really concerned about self-defense, he could easily have gotten out of the way in time to avoid getting hit. He I think he pauses to pull out his gun so that he could shoot her. And in that pause, he could have used that time to step aside rather than pull out his gun, aim it at her, and shoot her. So if he's really concerned about self-defense, why didn't he just step aside? So I guess that would be a question to this person, whoever voted for no, the killing was justified. Now maybe you think it was justified because he was defending his fellow ICE agent who had his arms in the car. Maybe he was worried that that guy was going to get dragged. But I would be interested to hear from you why you think it's justified. But I don't think there's a good case for self-defense as a justification. Now, I guess you could say, um, well, I guess maybe a couple things. One is this all happened so fast that he just didn't have time to think clearly about it. And so, um, like thinking slowly about it now after the fact, we can say, well, why didn't he just step aside? That was the obvious thing to do if he was worried about self-defense. But it's easier for us to say that now than it was for him in the heat of the moment to realize that. So does that provide him with any kind of defense? Also, did he know what direction she was going to go after she backed up? I think that's when she gets to the end of her backing up and is just about to start pulling forward. Maybe he thinks she's going to back up and then go left and go straight into him. And maybe that's what he's worried about. So maybe stepping to the right actually wouldn't get him out of the path if he thinks she's going to back up and try to hit him. Sorry, wait. No, she was backing up. Yeah, it was kind of like this. And then off to the right. So if she backs up, would she then, does it make sense that she would then go back forward to the left into them? Um, I don't know. Could he have been concerned about that happening? Or if she really wanted to hit him, why would she have backed up at all? Why wouldn't she have just continued forward? But maybe that's like if she was only concerned about Jonathan Ross in front of her, but maybe she was backing up because she was concerned about the guy who was leaning in from the side or had his arm in from the side and maybe backed up in response to that. But um, yeah, I'm just trying to come up with, I don't know if steelman is the word. I'm trying to steelman his case and like, are there any good reasons for him not to have just stepped aside to the right? And maybe it takes some time to for ideas to come to mind as to why that might have made sense. And maybe people should just ask him. I don't know if he's going to be deposed or cross-examined, asked about, why did you do what you did? Um, Kutababa says all these questions you're throwing out are exactly why this needs to be left to a trial in court. Yeah, I think that would be good. I don't know that. I mean, you can have your immediate reaction to the case, but sometimes ideas occur to you later. Like some of the things I'm considering right now, I have never considered before. They just came to mind just this moment as to what might have been going on in this scenario. And maybe you just got to give some things time for a while, even if you feel very confident about them. Um, Sometimes things can occur to you later, which change your initial view. All right, let me look at some more of these chats. Agosti says he can call in some minutes from now to discuss it a bit. I consider it murder. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll keep an eye out for your call. That helps saves my voice too, because I can only talk for so long. If someone else does some of the talking, then I can do a longer show. Kudababa says, maybe I need to watch his video again. I don't believe he fired until after he was struck by the car. Am I mistaken? I thought he might have, well, that assumes he was struck by the car, but I think that is a question unto itself. Was he actually hit, or did he just jump back or slip on some ice? I don't think it's clear whether he was actually hit, but whether he was hit or just kind of jumped back when the vehicle was very close to him. I thought the first shot might have been a little bit before that, but maybe I should just pull up the video. I see we just got another vote. One was, I don't know, I'm not certain. Okay. That's where I am. But although that was not my vote, I can't actually vote myself on this poll. So somebody else voted for, I don't know, I'm not certain. But that's where I am right now. Yeah, maybe I should pull up the video because this question came up earlier, I think in connection with some of Chachi's comments about when exactly the first shot happens. Oh, that was Jason Adams. Hi, Jason. He says, busy day for me. Hope all is well here briefly. So Jason voted for, I don't know, I'm not certain. I think it was manslaughter, says Jason. Let's look up manslaughter, get a quick definition of that. The crime of killing a human being without malice, aforethought, or otherwise, in circumstances not amounting to murder. So, I think it's pretty clear he was pissed off at the woman. So you might think there was some malice, and I think after the shooting happens, you can hear someone say, "Effing bitch." So I think it's likely that was Jonathan Ross because I think that came up that you can hear that on the recording from his phone, and maybe that was the only voice you would have been able to hear. I don't know if anyone else was that close, but at least seems plausible that was him saying that. So I think he's pissed off with the woman, but that doesn't necessarily mean he killed her out of malice. Yeah, I mean it could be maybe, but I don't know that it's certain. I speculated earlier, maybe she got his goat, so to speak, and he didn't want her to get away. Um, which if it wasn't self-defense, then you might look for other explanations of it. So if he clearly had time to just step out of the path, and that undercuts this self-defense case, then why did he do it if it wasn't self-defense? Well, maybe it's because he was worried about his fellow officer, or maybe he was just pissed off and he was acting out of malice in the heat of the moment. So I guess it's possible, but I don't think it's certain that it was malice that motivated the killing. Okay. And then Robert has a couple more chats here. I don't understand the speculation that he was trying to defend his fellow agents or anyone else. Given everything, I don't see a reason to even say maybe. That seems arbitrary. So you think the case about the agent getting dragged is baseless? I don't know if you were here when I talked about that. So as you may know, this officer was in an incident. Jonathan Ross was in this incident several months ago where he was dragged by some other, so someone he arrested or was trying to get out of the car, and he got injured from that. And I was saying, well, maybe he was worried that was going to happen in this case. And so he was trying to protect his fellow officer from that. Is that arbitrary? I see Agosti has called in. All right. And he gave me some money earlier. He sent in a PayPal, so I want to give his call some priority here. And but there's just one or two chats I haven't read yet, so let me just quickly read those. Then I'll take Agosti's call. Robert says the bumper had struck him once, so it's not inconceivable that in that moment he thought he was under a substantial threat. I don't know that the bumper struck him. I think maybe it did, but I don't think it's clear from the videos that he was hit by the bumper as opposed to he just jumped back when the bumper was very close to him or slipped on ice. And then Robert says, I don't think that'll hold up in a wrongful death suit, but it might keep him out of jail, unfortunately. That's a fair supposition, Jason, says Robert. It'll probably turn out that way. That is manslaughter, whether that's fair or not. One of my chats isn't showing testing, says Kudababa. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if, I guess YouTube sometimes filters out chats, but only you know if your chats isn't well, I'm showing it on the screen, I guess. So if the chat you entered doesn't show up in the screen that I'm sharing, then you can tell that YouTube filtered it out. Although I should change this to live chat because right now it's at top chat, and sometimes chats get filtered out if it's not on live chat. But now it's on live chat, so you can look in the chat to see if your chat got filtered out. You can look on screen. Okay, I see there's been some more votes too. Oh, one of your chats was lost to the void. I'll repost it. Okay. So thanks for the votes on the poll. So now we've got 5 votes. And now there was another vote for I don't know, I'm uncertain. Okay. So now that's tied with yes, it was murder. And there's 1 vote for the killing was justified. Okay, let me get to Agosti. I just got to make sure I have my Zoom settings correct. Thanks for being patient. And I don't know if you want to do video, but if you do, we could do video. So, but you can at least control your audio now. All right, I have just admitted Agosti. Can you unmute yourself? Hello.
Hi, Dan. Hi,
Hey.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello. How are you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
That's great. No, I'm doing fantastic. So, yeah, thanks for asking me.
And
Yeah,
thank you
I
for
cannot.
your money, your PayPal contribution. I appreciate that.
I had no problem. I give it because I appreciate the stream. So, there you go.
Thank you.
Um, I cannot call for too long because again, of course, difference in time. I have to go to bed in not too long. Um,
By
but
the way, do you want to do video or just audio?
No, I'm doing just audio because I am in my pajamas, so that would look a bit weird.
Okay. That- That's fine. Let's just
Yeah,
do audio.
yeah, I'm ready to go to bed already. But about this whole ice thing, looking from a distance, because before ice even existed,
You're in the
uh,
Netherlands, by the way, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm in the
Yeah.
Netherlands.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
that would explain why you're in pajamas, because people in the United States are, it's the middle of the day. But okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's not just like my style or anything. I'm just ready to go to bed.
gotcha. All right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So as a European, we hear a lot about the US and the police force and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that much of what is being said in Europe about the use of force by police in the US is often overdrawn. But the ICE issue, I do see a bit different because I they do something else, and it kind of expands the role of force by the government, which I think in itself is more problematic and makes the killing turn into murder. So to give an example, um, the fact that it was an ICE agent really, that's what I think I'm seeing, and I'm not looking into it very deeply, let alone not professional at all. So I also am allowed to be a bit irresponsible with my judgment, I think. But um, most people who would say it is a killing, I think they're a bit pro the existence of ICE, let's say. And they think it's a proper role of, just like the police, it's like a proper role of, like, they see it as law and order. But what ICE does, it's not really law and order, but it has the task to consider who is permitted on this territory. And if you don't know if somebody is permitted, they have the same legal means as using force, I mean, so also the killing, as the police, which is a very dangerous combo. Like, you will not give that to a private firm that is checking lobbies of hotels, of clubs. So if you're like in a place you should not be, that doesn't mean that you have the right to kill. And if you give the legal monopoly of force to such a weird task, it becomes kind of arbitrary, and then it becomes murder. So, for example, the killing of how authorities killed in the Soviet Union, we call that murder because we said, yeah, because it is the law and because you are working for the government and you have this legal task, doesn't mean that now everything you do is considered killing in the name of, how do you say that, law and order. It becomes arbitrary, and now I think it's murder. And of course, the people working for that engine, that ICE, they all feel like they have the right to use their guns, and you have to listen to us. But to me, it feels to begin with very arbitrary, and I don't know. For me, therefore, it feels a bit like killing. It's like you are not permitted to be here, therefore you may be killed. And so I don't know. For me, it kind of seems like in political theory, I would say it's simply murder, um, because there's no clear rules. There's no clear process afterwards. So they never seem to go to jail, for example. Like, what would happen if a a private firm that works for a club, for a hotel, for an apartment complex, if they would do the same thing, you know, it's still considered murder. And we have clear rules for that. And for ICE, I don't understand why they're treated the same as the police or the military, in that sense. So the rules are vague.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm taking some notes. So one point is about clear rules. So I'm not sure I understood the main point you were making. So let me just I'll try to say it back, and you can tell me if I'm getting it right or if I missed something. Are you saying that in a system where there are not clear rules, then it's we can that makes the law enforcement operations in that system that makes them murder or more likely to be murder? Like if they kill someone, but there weren't clear rules under which they killed someone, then it's a murder? Or did I not understand that?
It becomes more easy to make murder, to do murder. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna put that as if there are not clear rules, then it becomes easier to commit murder.
Like it uses force. Like when a state kills, I think state kills according to very clear rules, and those rules are public known as a process, and the force is proportional, and there's a traceable, like there is a certain responsibility. And the difference with murder is that we don't really know, but we say, well, it's the state.
Okay, you were breaking up a little there, so I didn't get it all.
Oh.
But maybe I got enough to say something. So if if there are clear rules, then it's well, I guess it's I don't know if it would be more or less likely for there to be murder um, than if there are not clear rules. Well, let's I'm not sure the best direction to go here, but maybe it would be valuable to say some about what rules are not clear. So we can just focus in on that piece of it and kind of set aside the issue of murder for the moment, so we can come back to that. But um, first of all, what are, or I could put it like this: how are the current rules unclear?
Um,
And yeah, any thoughts on that?
yeah, so the what's unclear to me, and again, I'm looking at from a very far distance, but the words like illegals and invaders and threats, and you have these words that gives rise to the existence of ICE. Like that's their, they're not busy, they're not concerned with law and order like a police. They are concerned with territory and potential threats. But I have no clue what the threat is of an individual, and I don't think they know either. And when I saw the video, that was exactly what I thought again. I was like, I don't see the threat here. I don't understand the what law and order, which is why, which is a reason to kill. I know what is there with this Renee Good that there was a threat.
Okay, so I think the if she's so there she was creating a problem by blocking traffic. I think that was what they were concerned about at first, and she wasn't a threat at that point in terms of like a lethal threat to anyone. I think that's clear. It's only later that she became, at least this is what some people will claim, she became a lethal threat once she started driving her car in close proximity to the ICE agents, Jonathan Ross and his fellow ICE agent. So that's not, I mean, that's a different. You might also say, well, there are illegal aliens who are living here and they're a kind of threat. But if you're just talking about the particular case of Renee Good when she was in her SUV, I don't think she was a lethal threat at first. Certainly not. But she was causing problems, and they came up to her to deal with those problems. And then the situation escalated into a case where
Mm.
then it was claimed that she became a threat at a certain point, and that's disputed, but that's at least how it evolved. It escalated into a case where it was claimed she was a threat.
Yeah, I saw the video. When I saw the video, I don't know, the way he was positioned, the way he stretched his arm, I saw no law in that. I didn't felt him, the ICE agent, upholding any law. It felt very unjustified and incompetent to me. Just the way, and I don't know how to explain it very precise, right? Because I don't know, I'm not an expert, but the way I felt when I watched it, that's how it felt. Like, what law is this guy upholding right here? And I didn't saw him being having to fear for his life or anything.
Okay, are you talking about the agent, the ICE agent that shot Renee Good?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, because there was more than one ICE agent close by. There was also the one who was reaching into her car, and you could also ask about her, about that agent. What law was he upholding if he was? But yeah, let's just let's just focus on the case of Ross. Do one thing at a time here.
Hmm.
Um, so you said you didn't see him as upholding the law. Okay, so let's talk about that. So there's, well, I guess his if we back up from this incident, I guess the law he was upholding is well, if there was a law that illegals can be deported. I don't know if I don't know exactly what the laws are that might allow for that, but um, ICE, I think they were trying to find people who are here illegally and then arrest those people. They were doing this in the city of Minneapolis, and whether they should be doing that or not, that's a debate that can be had. But that's why they were there in general. And Renee Good, she was trying to obstruct that activity, I think, or
Mm.
somehow divert ICE from doing that activity by parking her car in the middle of the street. So it was harder for people to pass by. So I guess maybe that would make it harder for ICE agents to move around the city and find people who are here illegally, make it harder
So
for
it was
them to
like
find people.
activism.
Yeah, she was engaging in activism. But of course, there's many different ways you can engage in activism. You can do so by standing on the side of the street and yelling at them and maybe
Hmm.
holding up signs, or you could do something that's uh, going to have a bigger impact by like if you're just standing on the side of the road protesting with signs and yelling things, that's not necessarily going to stop them from going around from house to house looking for people. But if you actually park your car in the middle of the street, that's doing something more obstructive of their operation. So she was getting in the way of them doing what they were trying to do, and maybe that was how she was in that's how she was counteracting ICE being able to carry out their duties, whether you think those duties are right or wrong. She was interfering with their ability to carry out their duties, um, and so they wanted to stop that, get rid of the obstruction,
Hmm.
and then that leads to the confrontation where she ends up getting shot. But that's the general context. So, but let me pause there and see if you want to say anything.
Yeah. Well, what the most important question for me then becomes is what they are doing. So she's up. So she's engaged in activism, and then for me the most important question then becomes the law that these ICE agents are basing their acts on. Is that proper or not? Because if it's not, it becomes maybe inevitable that you have tragic accidents, that you start killing a lot, and start to use force based on who do you think quote unquote counts or something. Like it operates at on a weird level. Because it enforces not the initiation of force like the police, but it enforces existence itself, like of these people. And I find it. I The quality, to put it that way, of the law then determines, I think, if you're killing or murdering. because you can kill in the name of the law, or you can murder in the name of simply control. If it's simply control, controlling the population via the monopoly of force, then I think it's murder. So yeah.
Okay, so I put a few things here. Um, you said, maybe I'll start with this last thing. The quality of the law determines whether you're murdering. So, um, how does that apply in this case? So, is the idea that, like, if you think this was murder, then the idea is that the law that the ICE agents were trying to enforce was not a valid law on your view, and therefore, um, if someone tries to obstruct the implementation of that law and gets killed as a result of that obstruction, then that killing is murder because the law that the person was trying to obstruct is an invalid law. Is that how you're thinking of this?
Mm,
Yeah.
um, find that difficult. I mean, yeah, I also find it difficult. But I wouldn't say that this Renee is now a hero or something, because I simply don't know. But what I am pretty sure of is that if a law is absurd, if it's clearly wrong, then killing based on just simply that law, then think it comes down to murder. Yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking of a parallel case which might be, I don't know if it's easier to consider, but let me just mention it and see where it goes. So let's say there's a law that's um, well, actually, okay, I'll go to this case. Let's say there's a law that allows the Nazis to kill Jews. And so there's a democratic votes, maybe the majority of the population uh, votes that Jews are um, a valid target of killing
Yeah.
because they're a cancer on society, they claim, and they're the source of all the problems of Germany. And so they enact this law that says you can kill Jews. And then a bunch of the agents of the government go around killing Jews. Is that murder because the law is invalid?
Well, it's funny because
Sounds right. Sounds, I think,
yeah, and in under the Nazi regime, it wasn't also the police killing the Jews. They made, just like ICE. I don't want to compare them in the exact same way, obviously, but also under the Nazi regime, they created a new kind of police, a new kind of, and they gave them also guns, etc., etc., and they killed Jews and like on the street, and they didn't have to do much. They didn't have to do much to get killed. And but law is law, So that was kind of the. It was funny because you have all these existing police agents, and also lawyers and judges, that they were not as supportive of the new regime, and therefore they created all these new positions of people that have the same task, and they listened better to Hitler, let's say. So it's funny because there's also a big difference, I guess, then between the typical police agent and the ICE agent. Like I don't know out of my own experience, but I would understand, I would find it logical that these would be two totally different kinds of people, even though they can both kill based on the law.
okay. Let me just make a note about that last point. ICE agents are different from normal police. I guess I'll put it that way. I want to go back to this point here. Um, so I gave this example of a Nazi law that says you can kill Jews. I think it strikes me right now, at least, that it would be right to call those killings murder, even
Hmm.
though they are legal killings because the law itself is corrupt. Um, but I was thinking, well, in this case, it wasn't an immigrant who was killed. It was an American citizen. So it's not a policy. The U.S. government doesn't have a policy that says you can kill illegal immigrants, and they don't have a policy that says you can kill American citizens. But this scenario where so I guess the law well I don't know exactly what the law says, but let's say the law doesn't say you can kill illegal immigrants, but it does say you can deport them. You can arrest them and deport them. And let's say that's the law that um, the ICE agents are trying to enforce. And then someone like Renee Good obstructs the implementation of that law. Not a law that says you can kill, but a law that says you can arrest and deport illegals. And then if someone gets killed as a result of obstructing that law, do you still call it murder because the law is wrong? Or do you not call it murder because um, the law is it's not it's weaker than saying you can kill illegal immigrants. It just says you can arrest and deport them. So I'm not sure that's relevant, the most relevant thing to ask, but I'm curious, like if the nature of the law that's invalid, like if we assume for the sake of argument at least that it's invalid to have this law that says you can arrest and deport illegal um, immigrants, and then someone gets killed while they're trying to obstruct the implementation of that law, would you still say it's murder?
Mm. Well, I don't know if this is a valid thing to say, but you could, of course, make the argument that if the law was valid, then the whole thing would not have happened in the first place, and you would not have this second order effect. Let's say. So in this case, only this obstructing and whatever, you still have to take into consideration is the reaction of the ICE agent in balance with what Renee did. And that's something for a judge to decide. But my layman's view on it would be that that she was turning away the car, which suggests that she was not posing a lethal threat when the shots were actually fired. So after the shooting, sorry, the agent, the ICE agent, was actually leaving the scene rather than rendering aid and etc. So in this particular case, I would still call it murder because he was so extremely incompetent, based on my layman's view of it.
Okay. All right. I think this might be going in a somewhat different direction, but that's okay. So it's so the direction that I thought we were going in was talking about, well, it's if there are if invalid laws are the context in which this event is happening, then that's a reason for um, calling his killing of Renee Good murder, since she's trying to obstruct this law, but the law is invalid. But it sounds like the reasoning you were just giving now is not so much to do with, well, these are invalid laws that they're trying to enforce, and that's why this killing should be regarded as murder. Rather, the reason is something specific to the scenario, namely, she was trying to turn to the right and avoid hitting him, and he's incompetent in that scenario. Um, so this seems like maybe a different grounds you're raising for calling it murder than the one that we were discussing a little bit ago. And that's
Well,
okay. We can, but yeah, go ahead.
now, given that she was not a, proper subject of the law, which was illegal immigrants and threats, etc., that's why I made the second order effect of like, he was. This whole thing would not have happened. Like ICE would not even have existed, and therefore also not this, um, event situation. Sorry. Um, if the law was not there. So that's why I went away from the law thing. But still, if it is not a proper law, if it is an arbitrary law, then yeah, you get it's inevitable that you get these kind of situations because not the public, but also not the ICE agent himself actually know what they're doing. So then I don't see it the same as the killing of, let's say, a police officer who knows exactly what's going on, which is, I don't know, somebody points a gun to somebody else, like it's clear. So eh, I would still then call it murder, um, because of yeah, the bad quality, let's say, of the law. So
Okay.
there was no clear immediate threat.
Okay. I'm just gonna plug in my laptop. Hold on a second. And I'm gonna get my water as well. Okay. I want to take a quick look at the chat, see if there's anything going on there. Um, oh, Linda Cordier is here. Hello, or at least was here. Haven't looked at the chat for a while, and I see some chats came in from her about 14, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm also leaving in not too long then.
Okay. Oh, Objective Ethics also was here. Hello. I was on his show yesterday. He also has a show, and I popped in, joined his panel, and I'll be doing an appearance on his show in a couple weeks on the 25th. Okay, I also see some chats from Jason. Okay, yeah, I think those are all the chatters that have come by. Oh, she is here. Linda says I'm here. Hi, Linda. Okay, and I want to take. I got some more likes on the stream. Nice to see. Thank you. Okay. So let me come back to my notes here. Okay, so I wonder if we should choose between two directions to go. One is talking about the law is invalid, and therefore we can say this, and it created the conditions where this killing occurred. Um, and so maybe the killing can be blamed, at least in part, maybe not fully, but in part on the laws that were in place. Like if those laws weren't in place, then this whole situation wouldn't have arisen. But maybe there's also blame to be put on the people involved in this particular scenario, and you can't entirely just blame the laws. But I think if you're going to call it murder, then at least some of the blame has to be on the particular people involved here, Ross, namely, at least Ross, if he's going to be charged with murder. So even if the laws have some of the blame, they can't have all the blame. It has to be also Ross himself and what how he chose to act in the scenario. Um, and it's so does that sound right? Like it's you both blame Ross and the laws here. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that would be correct. I think the law is not right because his task is not as specifically based on law and order and upholding objective laws as, for example, many of the police have to do. And I think that him in particular is, I don't know exactly, right, but I would assume, let's say, that he is in particular very different than a typical police officer with a lot of interest in law and order. And he is doing something different. And I think he's incompetent. So there's this two-sidedness to it, where I do think that he is also accountable. And I don't see the accountability also, which is, of course, a sign of the law being improper.
Okay. So I'm going to put two things here. So you think he's incompetent and ICE agents in general, they're different from normal police. So it looks like if that's they're different in a bad way, like they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. So I I guess would it follow from your view that no one should be an ICE agent and anyone who is an ICE agent is already doing something wrong. There's something blameworthy just by virtue of being an ICE agent.
I do question the allure of these people to become ICE agents. Yeah. So, but what I think I'm seeing is that these agents are incentivized by the role, by the law, to escalate more than to stabilize. Because,
Okay.
I mean, balancing the act of Renee Good with what the ICE agents was doing, I don't see how shooting three times, or I don't know how many times he shot her, um, in such a weird way. It looked non-professional to me, and I don't know how that stabilized any situation. For what it's worth, it made the whole situation even more dangerous. Let's say it was like a
Okay.
theater of dominance. Like I don't know. It felt like a state being out of control. I don't know.
hmm So I'm thinking about what is the best thing to focus on here. There's so many aspects of this. S so what the one point that has come up is there's something wrong about even being an ICE agent, like the sort of people who are attracted to them. I think you suggested there's something wrong with being attracted to this sort of position. And I do think there are some positions like that. Like maybe a clear example might be joining the Gestapo under um,
Exactly.
Hitler. Like anyone who joins that, I think it's reasonable to think there's something wrong with that person, unless they're like coerced to join it. Like sometimes a country might have a draft, a military draft, and even if you yourself are opposed to the regime, if you're forced to fight for it, then that can absolve you of responsibility. Um, but if you are willingly, voluntarily joining some corrupt organization, then you can't get off the hook in the way that you can
Mm,
if
mm.
there's, a military draft. I guess even if there's a military draft, you could try to be a protester and avoid your duty and go to jail or commit suicide. There are ways you could try to get around it that might be better than joining the military and killing people. Like maybe the Russians are a good example of that now. So they're going to war with Ukraine, and but I don't know if they're being drafted by Putin and if
They
they would
are,
get
yeah.
okay, they're being drafted. And actually, I think there's drafts on both sides because I think Ukraine
Yeah, yeah,
also.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So, but anyways, so let's just recognize that there might be some exculpatory um, factors in the case where you're coerced, but that's not happening in ICE. Yeah, these are people who are volunteering to join, but it's also not as extreme as like joining the Gestapo or joining the Russian army. Maybe still very bad and something they shouldn't do, but they're not like their mission is not to kill people on the other side, like it would be the case if you're joining the Russian army or if you're the Gestapo. The mission is not to. Well, I don't know what the Gestapo did. Did they beat up Jews on the streets or what exactly did they do? I don't know the details, but anyways, there might be degrees of difference between joining the Gestapo or joining the Russian army and then joining ICE. But still, it might be a bad enough organization, ICE, that no one should join it. I would certainly entertain that possibility, but I don't know if like how should maybe the difference varies as to like depending on your age. Like if you're an 18-year-old kid, are you as blameworthy for joining a group like ICE as if you're a 50-year-old man or 38, however old Ross is? I don't know how old he is, but you might think someone deserves more blame if they're much older and they've had more time to think and know things, understand the world compared to an
Yeah,
18-year-old.
there's certainly a degree in there, but blame nonetheless, I think.
Okay. Okay. And then so we can I guess then one question that could follow from this is then what next? So like assuming that everyone at least is in some degree blameworthy for joining ICE, um, does that mean then anything they do is bad because ICE is just inherently bad? So anything they do as an ICE agent in order to carry out the mission of ICE, deporting illegal immigrants, that's all invalid. So they're trying to enforce bad laws. Um, my mind just went to like the FDA. That's another set of bad laws. Like all the regulatory agencies, the Food and Drug Administration, um, that shouldn't even exist. So I'd say, but does that mean like everyone involved with the FDA is a bad person?
I mean, you
Or
can just
some of the
do.
people, like maybe there's certain functions of the FDA that would exist in a private market, even if there were no FDA, but maybe there are other functions which would not. And it's only the people who are involved with enforcing the bad parts that are doing something bad, but maybe not everyone involved with the FDA. Did you want to say something?
I mean, no, yeah. I mean, when you said that, I just thought about like, you can just be an IT expert and you don't care if you work for which part of government you work for. That's like, of course, a different thing. But what I, for example, see in the Netherlands is you have the Ministry of Defense. And the people that work there, most of the time, these people work there for their whole lives. and they're like, let's say, in love with their job, and it's a different kind of civil servant than the ones you see at the Ministry of Housing, let's say. So if you're really attracted to the Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Education and Science, which we have in the Netherlands, um, you do see differences between their opinions and how they work, and the people at the Ministry of Defense are way more. Also, they claim, and they deserve it, more autonomy in the government, and they are less dependent on other ministries. Uh, and most of the time, these are, in my mind, I like these people also more in general, on a personal level, let's say. Um, so yeah, if you really want to work, if you're really driven to work for ICE, um, to me that seems like, what is driving you exactly? Like the combination of the monopoly on force, but use strictly on something as vague as territory, and are you permitted here, and who are you, and these kind of things. Like, to me it seems so based on dominance, and I like, what is driving you over there? Like, that's what I'm would be interested in, and also feel a bit weird about.
Okay. So a couple thoughts here. Um, One, just so I don't forget, I remember you mentioned lobbying before. You called in and we talked because you
Yeah.
said you do some lobbying in the Netherlands, and we were talking about that. I don't know if you saw it, but Alex Epstein had a recent piece where he talked some about lobbying and how it can be used for good
Yeah, he lobbies,
purposes.
huh?
Well, he says in the piece he himself is not a lobbyist, but I guess he heads up an organization that does have some lobbyists. It's not clear to me why he says he
Hmm.
himself is not a lobbyist, but just maybe hires other people who are or is looking to hire. But anyways, I thought you might be interested in that if you hadn't seen that piece. Do you know which piece I'm talking about?
I haven't seen the piece, but what I did saw on Twitter or X, whatever, that he was looking for people that could work for his organization. And it was also talking about the act of lobbying. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna share this on the screen uh, in a sec. Okay, so it's on his Substack, maybe other places too, but um, it says the Energy Freedom Fund is seeking full stack energy freedom lobbyists.
Yeah, I
And
saw it.
okay, so I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that since I know you're in the lobby business. Um, okay, that's a little tangent, but since you're here, I wanted to mention it. Okay, let me go back to the notes that I was sure. Where's my notes page? Here it is. Okay. uh, oh yeah, automatically. That was my reminder of. So I was wondering if it follows from your view that because ICE is enforcing these illegitimate laws, that we can automatically know that Ross murdered Renee Good. We don't even have to watch the videos. All we have to know is the laws that he was trying to enforce, that she was getting in the way of enforcing. These laws are invalid. So if he kills someone, then he's automatically a murderer. We don't have to analyze the video, go frame by frame, look at it from different angles. It's sufficient to just know that he was trying to enforce invalid laws. And as long as that's what he was trying to do, he was in that
I
line of
mean,
work, then that's enough.
I mean, That's maybe a bit too short sighted. I mean, if she was trying to kill him, like there will be a different case, of course. But I don't see that she was, and therefore I think that his actions came down to murder, and that he is shielded by. So he's shielding morality by institutionality by saying like, oh, I have this task, I have this role, and like if as I said in the beginning of the call, if it would have been like some security agent of a mall, I think it would have been easier to say, "Hey, look, this is just simply murder." Um, but then again, I also know that some people say that she was actually posing a big threat and etc. etc. I didn't see that, but I wouldn't say that it is simply because it is ice and a kill, therefore it is murder. Because otherwise, it would be a bit a bit too easy. I don't know. I would not say it like that. Let's say.
Okay. Well, then it looks like the the main reason or the real reason, not sure how to put it exactly, is the particulars of this case. We can't
Yeah.
just talk about how ICE is trying to enforce invalid laws, and therefore it's open season. Anything goes when it comes to stopping ICE agents. You can just kill them willy-nilly, and that's okay. Or if they kill anyone in the process of trying to carry out their duties, it's automatically murder, no matter what the circumstances of the killing are. So if we're saying no, that's too quick. You can't just go based on the invalidity of the laws. You said like, well, if he thought his life was threatened, then then that could be a justification for killing her. But you don't think he was in fact threatened. Okay, but then we're talking about the particulars of this case. So it seems like that's the essential that we need to focus on here to decide if it was murder. Um, we can't just talk about the laws in general and whether they're valid or invalid. We have to look at um, the particular circumstances in which the killing happens. So then the question of, did he reasonably feel threatened becomes relevant. And it sounds like, on your view, he should not have reasonably been thought he was threatened. Uh, so I'm sympathetic to that view. It seems to me like he could have easily stepped out of the way. Although I guess I was pausing on that earlier when I was talking about this and saying, well, maybe when she backed up, it was to get away from the guy who was trying to grab inside her window. And then when she pulled forward, maybe uh, maybe Jonathan Ross thought he was going to aim for her. Um, I don't think he would have thought that if he was looking at her steering wheel, turning to the right. But if he wasn't looking at
Mhm.
her steering wheel, if his eyes, maybe if his gun and his eyes weren't pointed in the same direction, like maybe he had his eyes on his fellow ICE agent, looking to see what was happening with him, if he was in danger of being stuck in the window somehow and dragged. But his gun was ready to shoot her in case he did think that maybe his fellow ICE agent was going to be hurt. Maybe his eyes weren't looked in the same place that his gun was pointed, so he didn't see that she was turning to the right, and he had to make a split-second decision, and he decided to play it safe, give his ICE agent the benefit, his fellow ICE agent the benefit of the doubt that maybe he was going to be hurt badly, and so he shot. Um, but then why did he shoot her again 2 times from the side after I think it was clear that
Mhm.
his fellow ICE agent was not involved? Was that just kind of carryover? Does he get those 2 shots for free because he was already in a like panic mode, or and and he's trained to just um, eliminate the threat completely, shoot till the person is killed, um, or or what. So I think there's at least some reason to think he might have been acting in a justified way, maybe not necessarily out of self-defense, but out of defending his fellow officer. Maybe not much of a case for that, though. Um, but maybe at least a little case. Or I guess so. One other idea I had, which I mentioned earlier, but I'll say it again. Maybe he was backing up. Maybe he thought she was backing up in order to get away from the guy pulling into her window, and then he was, after she did that, and she was starting to pull forward. Maybe he thought he was going to hit her rather than go to the right, because if he wasn't looking in her window so that he could see her steering to the right, he wouldn't have seen. Um, so depending on where his eyes were pointed at a certain moment, he might or might not have been able to decide which way she was going to turn once she pulled forward. So I think there's some room to think maybe he was acting in self-defense because maybe she was going to pull forward in his direction if he didn't have his eyes on her steering wheel. But I don't know how likely that is.
I
But
mean,
let me pause there. Yeah.
well, something I also question is that she was standing still, right? And then she drove off. But I mean, if you see her coming to you, like a terroristic attack, let's say, like if that was her activism, if her activism was terror, he would have been yeah, you should shoot because this is you have to decide in a split second. You can not only jump away, you can also. I understand that perspective, but you're scared, not you, but like talking from his perspective, are you really scared for her to ride over you when you're standing next to the vehicle? It seems dramatic to it seems I don't know, like a power trip or something, like
Oh, you mean the second and third shot when he's clearly to the side and he's not in danger of being hit?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the only thing I can think of to justify those are that they are maybe they're trained to kill and not just shoot once because maybe the first shot doesn't always hit the target, or even if it does hit the target, it doesn't always kill the person. So maybe they're trained to just shoot a few times to increase the likelihood that the threat is definitely no longer going to be a threat. And so you're just kind of, that's why I said before, like maybe he gets the second, third shots for free because they're just trained to do multiple shots at once to ensure that the threat is gone. So as long as he thinks she's a threat when he fires the first shot, or at least might be a threat, then um, he just out of habit, out of training, he does the second and third. Um, but I don't think it would make sense if his first shot were from the position of the side. I think I don't know how that could be justified. I can only see it as maybe being justified if it's seen as like a carryover from the first shot, and it's just part of a series which he's trained to do.
Mhm.
Right now, that's all I can think of.
Yeah, and I also don't see how shooting her would have. I don't see the safety in there. Like I can understand the idea of I felt threatened. That I understand, but what is safe about putting out your gun? And for me, if you talk about we need to stabilize the situation and etc., I don't see how escalating. Uh, it seemed to me that like he did the exact opposite of what you would have done if you go with the idea of I felt threatened, etc., etc. Then I don't know. So yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna make a couple notes here. I know you said you had to go, so I don't know how much time you have, but
I
um,
just wanted to say, yeah,
okay. Well, of course, just let me know whenever you gotta leave. But I'm gonna write a couple notes here. So um, I don't know how to title this. Maybe I'll title it. Possible reasons for thinking it was, or for thinking the I'll say the first shot. I don't know if I want to include all the shot, but at least the first shot. Possible reasons for thinking the first shot was justified, and I'll say one is Heath or Ross thought um, Good, Renee Good, might try to hit him. And I'll put in parentheses because his eyes weren't on the steering wheel, so he didn't see that she was turning to the right, which would have been away from him. So maybe she thought she was going to go. Maybe he didn't know what direction she was going to go, and he heard the engine revving as she was about to pull forward, and he had to make a quick decision on what to do. So that's one reason. And the second reason is Ross thought his fellow ICE agent, I don't know the guy's name,
Hmm.
who was reaching in the window, might be in danger of getting dragged. So, you were saying, like, why does he escalate by pulling his gun out as opposed to just stepping out of the way? Well, maybe these two reasons here could explain it. And maybe he's thinking that, well, I'm not the one escalating. Um, Someone else is, Renee Good is escalating by revving her engine about to drive forward. And so in reaction to that, I'm gonna shoot to make sure she doesn't drive at me. And or I'm going to shoot her to make sure my fellow ICE agent doesn't get hurt. So, he's yeah, I guess that's he might say that, or his defense might say that in reply to the charge that he was unnecessarily escalating the situation. Okay. You want to reply to any of that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that, um as a civilian, I think it's important to not fear the authorities too much. And if a officer feels threatened, and therefore it would be proper for him to use his gun on you, you would create such a big tension between, like, I would not, if it comes out that Ross acted accordingly. If I was an American and I would see an ICE agent like somewhere, I would not talk to them at all. I would just think, these guys can do. They don't need much to pull their guns. Like I don't know. I will be a bit fearful, and I don't think that will be a nice consequence of. I don't think that's why they should be on the street. You should not fear your state, etc. But that's maybe besides the point.
Hmm. Yeah, I think well, this does seem to give I think it does provide reason. This whole episode, it does give one reason to be more fearful of one's interactions with ICE agents. If this kind of stuff can happen, um, yeah, that seems right. And it raises, and maybe that adds motivation also to question whether this sort of institution should exist in the first place. If having this sort of institution, ICE, uh, enables these sorts of scenarios, then um, I think that should lead to one questioning whether this is actually a good sort of institution, or behind
Exactly.
that, the laws that give rise to such an institution,
Yeah.
the immigration laws. Um, Maybe it'll cause some people to think more about whether we have a good immigration system. I guess I'll take a look back at the chat now, see if there's anything there.
Yeah. Then I think that that's a good place to end the call,
Okay.
because I'm also kind of tired. But it was I really like this conversation, and I'm going to still listen to the rest of the episode, and for maybe half an hour, and then I'm
All right.
clocking out and going to sleep.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you for calling in from the Netherlands. I guess you're after midnight there, so I understand it's bedtime. But yeah, thanks again for calling in, and thanks for your PayPal pal contribution. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, and we'll talk again next time.
All right. Sounds good. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
All right. That was good. We had a civil, respectful conversation about a very emotionally charged issue. And I think if we're going to have a rational view of it, that's the kind of conversations we need to have. And we don't want to just devolve into tribal factions, as so often happens when there's an event like this and you have all these people um, throwing insults and ad hominems at each other. Um, I don't think that's productive to reaching a good view of the matter. So, yeah, I think this is a worthwhile conversation to have had. So that was good. All right, I want to come back to the chat. And if you appreciate this sort of conversation, then thanks. Maybe you can show that. You can add a like to the stream, help promote the show. You can subscribe, consider subscribing if you're not a subscriber. Or you can do a super chat or a super sticker and financially support the show. I see we got some more votes. Oh, we have to up to 8 votes now. And the plurality is now for the last position, which is I don't know, I'm not certain. That's interesting. So for a while, most votes were for yes, it was a murder. But now the most votes is for the last one that says I don't know or I'm not certain, which was my position. And maybe hearing that conversation swayed some people who were on the fence, or maybe you previously held one position, but hearing some more discussion of it swayed you in another direction. I guess you're more likely to be swayed in my direction since I'm the one whose podcast you're listening to right now. Maybe if you're listening to some other podcaster who held a different opinion, you would more likely be swayed in that direction because you're hearing all the reasons for that position. So maybe it's not surprising that this is how the results have gone. But it is interesting to see, and I'll leave that poll up here. I won't close it quite yet, so you can still vote. I see we got a super sticker from Florida Nick. Thank you for $1.99. I appreciate that. And he says tired, or at least that's what the emoji says on his sticker. I don't know if he's actually tired, but is that a coffee cup with it says tired on on the side there. I guess you get a choice of emojis on these stickers you can buy. Um, anyway, thank you, Florida Nick, for that sticker. Linda says this needs to go to trial. Yes, it does, says Linda, or says Nick. Good show. I have to go, says Linda. Have a good night. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that, Linda. Thanks for being here. Oh, that was for the caller. Oh, that was for Agosti, the super sticker. So am I now on the hook to pay Agosti a buck 99? Or maybe only 70% of that because I get 70% of YouTube gets a cut of 30%. So I guess YouTube gets about 60 cents and I would get $1.40. Um, but I guess yeah, I don't have a rule here that says like if a caller comes on, then they get half of the sticker. But maybe I should have that rule. Maybe that will encourage more callers or maybe more stickers and super chatters. If they know they're going to get a cut of my super chats, then maybe that'll encourage some more people to call in. Oh, just because he was tired. Oh, I see. The coffee cup that says tired because of Ghosty, it's getting to his bedtime, and that's why you chose that super sticker. I got you. See, it takes time to figure these things out. Just like you might think with the case we're talking about today, you think about it more, and then you learn more. All right, I think there were maybe some other chats I hadn't read yet. Oh, there's hearts on a smiley face from Linda to Robert. The goddess of art is in the house. Yeah, Linda, she runs an art gallery, the Quint Cordair Art Gallery. I think I read these. Oh, Jason says I started reading. Was that a book? Audiobook? Audible. I started Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right. A 21st Century Citizen Guide by I think it's Anders with an S. Anders Ing Marson this weekend. Okay. I haven't read that book. I've heard of it though. I believe he gave a talk at the Irreplaceable Spark conference about his book. And then Jason says to the caller, there are clear-cut cases where someone can enter or near someone or their property knowing better, i.e., breaking a safe, having a weapon, and the end of their life would be supported by self-defense. I don't think the case with Ice and Renee Good is one of them. That is, it's not one of the clear-cut cases. At most, it would be akin to pursuing a shoplifter who dropped their loot was unarmed. She could be chased by a security guard, but force is limited to following and gathering information until city or state police arrive. So you can't just shoot a shoplifter, that's what you're saying. It would be akin to a case of pursuing a shoplifter who dropped their loot and was unarmed. she could be chased. So the idea is like they could chase Renee, they could take down her license plate and go after her later, but they shouldn't just shoot her then. And you say it's akin to a case where the shoplifter is unarmed, but I guess the argument would be, well, she was armed with her vehicle, and maybe she wasn't intending to use it as a weapon, but maybe the officers didn't know that. Maybe they had reasonable to believe it was at least possible that she would use it to ram them. Um, Especially if they, as I said, if they weren't looking at her turning to the right, or at least if Ross wasn't looking in that direction, if he was looking at his agent reaching into the door, maybe he wouldn't know if she intended to use it as a weapon or not. So maybe there's a slight difference here. Maybe he wasn't in a position to know she was unarmed, that her vehicle was not going to be used as an arm. Linda says they were clearly out of line. Things like get out of the effing car and then effing biatch after shooting her. She even said, I'm not mad at you. Then he shoots her. Yeah, I don't think that that was I'm doubtful that they should have been as aggressive as they were. And if the goal is to de-escalate, it doesn't seem like they did right. To say get out of the effing car and stick your hand in the window and try to open her door. Um, that doesn't seem like de-escalating behavior. How about asking politely, please get out of the car, ma'am, or I'm going to have to use force. Um, Instead of making it so urgent, right? I think that's the way things can escalate out of control if you don't give time to people for people to think, to respond to requests. If you just immediately say start barking out orders and physically going into their space, sticking your arm in the car, then it's harder to use your reason to process the situation, and emotions can start to flare up and things can get out of control. So it seems like this doesn't seem like due process was being used. Like, is that the correct process to go through in order to deal with a person who's getting in the way of your operation? I haven't read the rules of procedure on ICE, but um, I guess if that is what you're supposed to do, it seems like they might want to revisit that, reconsider whether that's appropriate process. He could have aimed for her tires to disable the car, but he chose to murder her, says Linda. Yeah, I guess he could have. I mean, he might have been too. I don't know if he was in a position, at least when he was at the time of the first shot, because he was kind of in front of the car. He might have had to like bend down and in order to get that bullet underneath to shoot the tire, but maybe he thought that would be too risky. Like if he thinks maybe she's going to drive forward into me, then to like bend down so you could shoot underneath and hit the tire, that maybe that would be too risky for him to do at that point. Maybe he would think that would increase the chances of him getting run over. But yeah, once he's in the position of second and third shot, then he'd be on the side, so he would have a cleaner line of sight, I think, towards the tires. Um, but at that point, as I was saying, if he's just trained out of habit to shoot at the target for the follow-on shots, to make sure that the threat is dead, I don't know if it's asking too much of him to redirect his shot for the second and third shots, because maybe he has an instinct that he's trained to continue firing at the same place. I don't know. ICE needs to be abolished before we all have to show our papers, says Linda. That is problematic. It's concerning. Maybe I should say that instead. It's concerning if we're in a state where you do have to show your papers. What about innocent until proven guilty? How about only having to show your papers if there's reasonable suspicion that you are not here illegally? But even that, um, I mean, it's a lot of people who are here illegally shouldn't have to be here illegally. I think they're often here because the laws make it so hard to come here legally. So, there might even be reasonable suspicion, like if there are uh, people hanging around a Home Depot. Um, and I think that's many immigrants try to get work that way. So I don't know what the odds are, like statistically. Is it a 50% chance that those are illegal immigrants? Is it a 90% chance? Is it a 20% chance? And I don't know what the threshold is. How likely does it need to be? Like, what percentage likelihood does it need to be in order for it to qualify as a reasonable suspicion? But if there are millions, and there are millions of illegal immigrants here, then I think there likely are many contexts where there would be reasonable suspicion, however we choose to define that, a strong chance um, that some people, construction sites, I think they're often sites where um, illegal immigrants work. And if all of a sudden, immigrants stop showing up to work, then you might know like that, those maybe those are illegals who were there. Like if ICE comes into town and then all of a sudden the construction jobs in that town grind to a halt because they know ICE is in town and might go after them if they're on the construction site. Um, and then they come back out as soon as ICE leaves town. Maybe does that provide reasonable suspicion that those are illegal immigrants? So maybe there are contexts where there are illegal immigrants, but um, does that then justify asking for papers? Um, I don't know, maybe, but the more fundamental problem here is the laws. So it's a lot of the people who are here illegally shouldn't have to be here illegally. And I think until you fix the laws, you're going to have problems because it would be bad to have laws on the books that you just don't take seriously and don't enforce. You should either get rid of the laws or enforce the laws. So I guess if showing papers is part of enforcing the laws and you have bad laws on the books, then I guess it's harder to argue against law enforcement going around for asking people to show their papers. I mean, does that mean if they don't do that, are you just asking for there to be people who flaunt the law, who don't who violate the law. Um, so the fundamental problem is not that people are going around asking people to show their papers, is that there are laws on the books that allow people or that make it justifiable for people to go around asking for people to show their papers. I think that's the more fundamental problem. I don't think you can really, it doesn't do a lot, I think, to just object directly to the asking of people to show the papers themselves. It's what one really needs to object to is the conditions that give rise to the fact that people go around asking for papers. Okay. We definitely need better immigration laws. Nick just says, I've heard that the sheriffs in my county are asking everyone they have contact with where they are born. So that's another way of, it's similar to asking for papers, where again, I guess I would say that's that's not the root of the problem. That's a symptom of a underlying problem, which is we have bad immigration laws. And so long as you have those bad laws, then there are going to be these unpleasant results of that, such as people being asked about where they're born, whether they have papers. So, anyone want to talk about the laws, the underlying issue, the underlying problem? Anyone want to defend the laws from which all these, from which this tragedy resulted? Because a lot of people, a lot of MAGA people, they want less immigrants, and I think not just illegals. I think it they started out saying that, but then later it became any immigrants, I think, or at least immigrants from certain places, maybe accepting South Africa because there are some white people, so-called, from there. So maybe it's not really about illegal immigration after all. It's about immigration, period. Some people just, or maybe it's just about racism, because if they allow certain immigrants, like South African whites, but they're uncomfortable with other immigrants from who aren't whites, maybe it's really just racism, which is the maybe that's the foundation for a lot of people who are anti-immigrant. And racism is a form of collectivism. As Ayn Rand said, it's the most primitive form of collectivism. I'm looking up on the Ayn Rand lexicon her entry on racism so I can make sure I get. Oh, yeah, here's the quote. Racism is the lowest, most crudely primitive form of collectivism. Is there an entry on immigration in the lexicon? No, I don't see one. She didn't write much about immigration, to my knowledge. I think the most concentrated source of her comments on that I'm aware of is an answer she gave in a Q&A after one of her lectures, I think, which eventually appeared in the book in an edited form in the book Ayn Rand Answers. Looks like my Zoom video keeps freezing. Many times I've noticed it's stuck in the same position. Here's that sentence I just read from Ayn Rand about racism. That's from her book, The Virtue of Selfishness. She has an article on racism in that book. Okay, anyone else want to say anything in the chat or call in? Now's a good time because you don't have any competition. Got another like on the stream, up to 8 likes now. I don't know if you can change your vote on that poll. I'm curious though. I wonder if there's a way to do that. Anyone else want to say hello? You can also just say hi in the chats. I like to see who's here. But of course, you might want to be anonymous. That's okay. Oh, Nick says you can't change your votes. Okay. I don't know if anyone wants to change their vote, but I would be curious. Does anyone who voted in the poll want to change their vote? Like if you could change your vote, is there anyone who would change your vote? Sometimes it's interesting to do a before and an after. Like at debates, sometimes people will say which side of the debate they lean towards, and then after the debate, they'll do another poll and see if anyone changed their minds. So here, maybe some people have changed their minds after having heard the conversation with Agosti, or at any rate after the point they originally voted, maybe they changed their mind. So you can let me know in the chat if you want as to whether you changed your vote or would if you could. All right, so we've talked about 2.5 hours about this topic, and we could talk about something else if you all want, or I could just end the stream, or I could take a break. I'm not sure what the best option is. Hmm. I could take a poll. I've done that before as to whether I should continue streaming after a break. I do have something else I could do today, some uh, that I was thinking. So I guess, yeah, I definitely got something else I could do today. I don't have to. I mean, I could end the stream now and do this other thing, but if I have some people who are here and want to ask about something, discuss something, then I can stick around. But otherwise, because I just remembered this other thing that I need to be doing, I might start working on that some, unless someone pipes up soon in the chat and says that they want to talk about something or ask a question about something. So maybe I'll give you a little time, a minute or two to raise anything else you want in the chat. And if I don't see anything, or if I guess I could also look at my notes to see if there's anything else I want to mention now. Um, oh, I don't know if Kuda Baba is still here. You asked about music recommendations. I was going to say a little more on that. I don't know if you're still here though. Maybe I'll save that for later when I know you're here. Yeah, I think I'll wait another minute or two, and if nothing else comes up in the chat or no one calls in, then I'll just end the stream. So now's the time. If you want me to keep going, say something in the chat or call in. Today is the 12th, so if I stream 5 days from now, which is my normal interval, my next stream would be January 17th, which is Saturday. And usually I stream around 1 p.m. Pacific and go for a few hours. Today is actually shorter than most of my streams recently. My longest stream was almost 10 hours. Not sure when, if ever, I'm ever going to break that record, but um, today's stream is looking like it's going to turn out to be about 3 hours. Oh, I guess I'll end the poll now and I'll share it on the stream because I think the poll results don't show up in the live chat replay. You can see them during the live chat, but just to make sure they get recorded, So if they don't show up in the live chat replay after the stream, but if I display the results on the screen, then that will be a way to preserve them. Where'd my chat window go? Here it is. Okay, let me share that. All right, so it turned out there were 8 votes on the question, was the killing of Renee Good a murder? There were 8 votes, and 3 of those votes, 38%, was yes, it was a murder. 0 votes for no, the killing was self-defense. 1 vote for yes, sorry, 1 vote for no, the killing was justified. That's 12% of the votes. And then 4 votes, or 50% of the votes, was for I don't know, or I'm not certain whether it was a murder. All right, so I'm going to end that poll now. And those results now show up on the screen. I guess they're ordered in from order of the ones that got the most votes to the least votes. So the most votes was I don't know, or I'm not certain, which was also what I would have voted for if I could vote. Then the next most votes was for yes, it was a murder. And then no, it was not a murder, it was justified. That got 1 vote. Thanks for participating in that poll if you did. I'm going to stop the screen share now. And haven't seen any new chats or new callers, so I'm going to end the stream. All right. I want to thank everyone for being here, whether you're here live or if you're listening to this after the fact. And thanks for your participation in the poll or in the chats, and thanks to Agosti for calling in. Thanks also to Agosti for his PayPal contribution and to Florida Nick for your super sticker. All right, I'll be back in about 5 days. Well, probably exactly 5 days on Saturday, unless something else comes up. So until then, have a good one. All right, bye everyone. See you later.